Okay, so recently, 2 days ago as of recording, the secret ending to Chapter 6 was released. And since its release, people spent a total of, I think, probably close to 30 hours, 31 hours I think it was, trying to figure it out. I being amongst that group for a majority of the time. And this will just serve as an explanation to a bunch of the puzzles and a general guide for doing so. This is just raw footage. I just want to like show the raw gameplay of the secret ending. But yeah, this is assuming you've already done Chapter 6 in its entirety. And the general way to start Chapter 6, the secret ending for Chapter 6 technically begins in Part 1, but I will just explain it here. So in Part 3, you find this note right here that you convert with the key ArtofDumpling, which you got from Part 1. There's a sticky note on a desk that says ArtofDumpling is key. You would convert this sticky note with a Visionaire cipher, where it will basically tell you that the code to this keypad over here is the canonical in-game date, which in this scenario is 01232051. We are January 23rd, 2051. We need to do this in particular because we cannot use the acid that we would attain under the fume hood, which I will explain in a second. Let me grab this wrench. I need to grab the Red Bull as well, I completely forgot. So you're gonna play the game like normal after you unlock the code. So create the heavy flashlight. You break through here, that is the wrong button. Grab the beaker, untie the caps, and then grab the nitric acid from this container. So then once you have the water tank here, you're gonna also need to break the glass on the fume hood with the sharp mallet. Combine these two. And then you're gonna break the glass here. You're gonna put out the fire, but you're not going to... I did not pick up the water. You're not gonna pick up the hydrofluoric acid. Instead, what you're gonna do is you're gonna cover the back of this with the bed sheet from the door we unlocked earlier. We would not be able to continue this step because we would have to use the acid on the platinum lock, but since we unlocked it normally, we can just run over here and grab the bed sheet. And then we can drape it over the back of the fume hood, just through here. So you put the bed sheet on there, then you'll be able to put the water tank up here, the empty tank. Oh yeah, it has the little things, that's cool. Yeah, you're gonna put the empty tank up there because we are going to do a reaction in just a second. I have to separate all these cameras. Okay, so once you have all the scrap metal from the cameras, you're going to come back through here and you're going to melt all the scrap metal inside of the acid. This will build up hydrogen gas inside the tank, which you cannot see yet because I have not done this yet. There we go. You'll build up hydrogen gas inside the tank, and then you're done entirely with the fume hood. So after this point, you see it has a little explosion icon next to it. Very subtle hint. We are not making a bomb. Don't worry. You just need to combine these wires for no reason whatsoever. You are not doing anything with it. Anyways, you're gonna create a longer circuit, a half circuit. Combine this braided wire with the half circuit that we just made to make a short circuit, XL. And then we're not making a bomb, okay? We are not making a bomb, nor are we blowing up this wall. But once this wall randomly collapses in, the timer will stop because this is where the long part of the ending is. You need a password for the computer, which I think many people just assumed it was just terminal because it's the name of the game. But I'm not sure if there's an actual way to get that, but it's whatever. So once you're in, it'll tell you to type help. You can type help, it'll list you some basic commands you can do, how to get out of the computer. The main one we're going to do right now is access the chat room. And once you're here, someone else will come talk to you, which I will be silent for this part while everything comes in. Alright, so Janice comes onto the computer and basically tells us that we're gonna die to the shrink and grow in a few hours, which we do learn about that in the main ending. But now that we have access to this computer, we are able to access the many files inside of the Henopix cloud, the different directories, and then she gives us these two codes. Now, you can just copy paste them if you really wanted. You can like type it out, copy, or yeah, just select it all, copy if you don't want to remember them. I will note though, these hashtag and asterisks are just their way of differentiating. You're going to go to open the directories and you'll see, I typed space. You will see the hashtag token represents the name of a directory and the asterisk token represents the password. So again, if you don't want to be remembering it whenever she gives it, these do save every time you swap. So if I go to the chat room right now, if I wanted to copy the directory password, I'm pretty sure a lot of these are zeros, by the way. I don't think any of them are ever O's, just to make it simpler for you. But yeah, you always have to go to home, by the way, when you're in the chat room. Yeah, you'll see the name that we typed previously saved. You can just type the password. And then once you have a valid directory listed, you just type open dir, and you will open this file. Now this file just explains to us how like the naming convention for the lab notes, all these different directories are obtained, which there are two different types depending on the year that the computer that you're using was made. This computer was made in 1985, so we would be using this computer type, this naming convention for our computer type. But they will still be both be listed the same for the computer manufacturing year. They'll still be 85, it's just we're using a different convention entirely. Anyways, once we have this, we will have to compare all this information to the computer specs that we can obtain from here. This will display computer information. We are to use all this computer information here in conjunction with the document that we have just previously opened, which will give us a code. This is the code that Janice was talking about here, where she needs a file name. So after all that, you're supposed to receive this file name here, 5MD04ST5. I'm still not entirely 100% sure where we got that. All I know is that it was based on the computer specs of our own computer. with the computer's model. Here, I need to erase this to go back. We have the computer model index of GD1. Wait, where is this actually? Okay, yeah, no, I'm sorry. I cannot find this again. But our computer was used for the transform size modification experiment shown in the previous file, which would relate to SMD as the shortening, which we would then change to 5MD for number letter conversions. I don't... because our storage space is 2 GB, so we're only allowed a certain set of characters. It's multi-layered. People took like 3 hours on this, partially because there was a typo, but that's irrelevant. So once we give Janice this password, I will stay quiet again while she talks. She will then give us a separate directory entirely. And she says that she'll need to leave for a little bit. So once we take this directory and open it up, this is where the main puzzle truly begins. This is where a lot of people got stuck on for the longest time. I think it took about 10 hours or so to solve all these directories, because there are a lot of directories listed inside this. So for this first one, all these different numbers represent different ASCII characters, which will end up giving us the solution of TTTELEPS for the directory name, and good luck for the directory password. Now, I will note, before I continue, all of these directories are entirely skippable, as these will all just eventually lead to us getting access to... access to the firewall here, where we need a password to disable such. This is what eventually all these directories will lead to. If you wanted to skip ahead straight to the firewall, I will leave a section in the chapters for this video so you can skip directly to that. Or if you want to see where how all these puzzles are solved, I will just keep talking about them. I do not have any of the solutions pictured to show on screen, but I can just explain the process. I will just be explaining the process that we use to find these files. So yeah, if you wanted to just skip to the firewall, I will leave a chapter section where you can just skip to it, or probably a timestamp in the description or comments or something like that. So yeah, I will go back to the directory we're just in right now. The TTTELEPS, that is not how I spell it. The password, good luck. And this is just some binary. You would separate the binary based on the 8th character, as binary typically is. And we already have the directory name here, so we would just have to go back to the directory. The binary just gives us the password. So we type in the directory name, the password ends up being FH9WB31K. So then once you open this directory, it tells us we would need to brighten up. Now, if you look on the bottom here, I don't know if you can see it, there is some text hidden inside the screen, which we can actually select. It makes us select this, but the click range extends to here. That's weird. It's about here, it looks like, where the password starts. Over here. It's really hard to see even when you brighten up the image because of all the noise in the background. But if you were to brighten your computer image, change the contrast, I'm not sure exactly what you need to do because, well, it's hard to see through the noise. It would return to you, the file name being this. It would return to you G8W9PL0K for the password for the next directory. And then this next one, it's just a simple relating these numbers to your phone, phone keypad, where if you press 2 twice, it would change from an A to a B. Press 6 3 times, it would. It's just a simple phone pad password. So that would then yield us the answer of B0JHYEIU. That is not a 0. That is why I. Okay. That is entirely my fault. It's not a 0. It's an O. So it does. Okay, it is an O sometimes. All right. I do not remember it being an O as many times, but yeah. Now this one had us. Not many people actually figured this one out. There's just one person who quickly figured this out, and then we all just moved on. This uses Roman numerals. So, for example, this 2424 is one letter. There's 8 different sections of Roman numerals. This is one letter where each of these 2424s turns into X on the alphabet, which would then be 2 X's, which in Roman numerals is 20. And so once you convert that 20 in Roman numerals back to the alphabet, that would then give us the letter T. So it's a little like double layered in Roman numerals. You're just basically finding out what letter each of these represent, each of these little numbers. So like this, for example, is XXIII. And then you're going to convert that into numbers and then convert that number into the alphabet to get the answer. So XXIII 23, this would give us W, and so on. So what this would then, that's OpenDIR. What this would then result to is the directory name being this, and the password being 2 times. Now next, this one I think we also got stuck on for quite a while. What this was, though, was the number that we would receive here, we would write out, and then the bracket tells us to take the letter in the slot of when you write out the number. So, for example, this bracket tells us to take the first letter of 5. You're taking the nth number letter inside the number once written out. So for 2, for example, it tells us to take the third letter. So it tells us to take O, so we have FO. And eventually, once you do that for all the numbers, you will receive the code for given. And now this next one was really annoying. It just took a long time. We had to plot each of these coordinates on a coordinate grid. These lines representing where we would connect the coordinates. So for example, 1, 3, and 3, 3 were connected with a straight line. And we would do that throughout the whole time until it would spell us we would do that for each of these coordinates until it would spell us out the next password, which would be TSRLAYKQ. And then once you open this directory, you'll find a bunch of random bold and unbold numbers, all the way up to 5. Now, this one was not so much complicated as it just took a while. We had to... Okay, think of it in a grid, right? Starting from the top left, you would draw 5 squares out, colored in, shaded, whatever. And then the next grid, the non-bold, would be spaces. So you would have 5 colored in squares, the next square being empty, and then 4 colored in squares. And you would do that for each of these 5 rows, and it would create the next password. Similarly to how we just did the coordinate grid, except this time we're coloring in different squares instead of plotting points. And once you do that, you will receive the password for the next directory. I am typing that wrong, which turns out to be TR74ENIV. And this is basically just a slider puzzle, except you can't like interact with anything. You can't slide it yourself. You just have to like piece it together in a separate software, image software, or however you wanted to do it. Some people just read like this, for example, Koja. This does not form a word, but it's in one tile, so that was part of the password, or people assumed that was part of the password. It's a really weird layering. I don't know how we got it as quickly as we did, but the password for this next directory would then turn out to be S9R4KL31. After you solve the image, which, again, I don't know how people would have done it so fast. I mistyped something, okay. Okay, I accidentally stopped my recording when I went to check the file name, but I was just typing the name wrong. So it was 5NNA1EXJ. I was just typing it wrong entirely. The password still is the same, S9R4KL31. And then once we open this, we're given a bunch of random letters, and at the bottom we are told to find hertz.sort. This is just Python language. It's basically telling us to just find the frequency of the letters and then sort them. And so someone had sorted all the found the frequency of each letter, and then sorted them alphabetically, and that would then give us a bunch of numbers going alphabetically, excluding the last 5 letters of the alphabet. So that's what told them, hey, there must be a code in here somewhere. And so what you would then end up doing is, for example, A, I think, showed 20 times in this whole block of text. So you would relate that to the 20th letter of the alphabet, and so on, which would then leave us with the code, let me not mistype the directory name, which would then leave us the code RCSKHEIQ. And then this is the end of the, what's it called? This is the end of all those directories. Those directories alone took everybody like a few hours. And then after this, the computer is emulating a vertical stack error, saying how we've basically gone through too much, and I don't remember exactly what a vertical stack means. All I know is that this is meant to hint us towards taking all of our previous codes, and we would then format them vertically instead of horizontally. So, like, instead of writing out, for example, the last code, RCSKHEIQ, you would then write it out vertically so that it would go from top to bottom, and then write all the different passwords, like, alongside each other. I don't remember if it was passwords or directory names. But yeah, once you would have done that, you would have been left with just a password. So you wouldn't be able to type it into a directory name. This then gave people the idea to input it into the firewall, which now this is where everyone else would come back from if they didn't want to listen to the different directories previously. This would lead you back to the firewall, which would give us the password FH28SWJ3. You press enter, and this deactivates the firewall. Once we do this, a new user will have joined the chat room. And so you go back to the chat room, and I will stay quiet while this person talks. Right, so what this person basically tells us is Janice is dead, first of all. Like, they've been pretending to be Janice to get our trust and get us through these puzzles that they made. And they now are trying to help us figure out the store code, but they're obviously not gonna make it obvious, so, you know, if you go to ask them for a hint. But they will not give us a hint, because they want it to still be a puzzle. And so we're given the hint grid. Now, there's gonna be... Oh, they removed it, never mind. During the hunt for the secret ending, the devs did add a little bit of extra dialogue, unless they added it to grid, I don't remember. But yeah, here, let me ask about grid first. Suppose I didn't ever specify which grid to use, did I? A square grid. Make sure everything you test out is in nice, even, uniform squares. You know, like the ones in graph paper. So now, they added these bottom two lines during the secret ending hunt, so we didn't have this initially. But it was at this point, people spend an hour trying to discover the grids. I discovered almost immediately that if you gave them actual grid coordinates, for example, if I give them A4, right? They give us a directory name and a password. And they do this for the grid numbers all the way up to G29. Now, initially, since I was the first one to discover this for a while, I had the idea of maybe it's like one specific directory that will give us an answer, because if I open up this directory, for example, let me copy paste the password. .061C2BXX, the password. If you open up the directories that they give, it just ends up being a bunch of gibberish. A bunch of, like, G's, B's, P's. It's a specific set of characters, I think 10 specific characters. But each of them give a random set of characters that don't really amount to anything. So my initial thought was there was something in the other hidden lines of dialogue, like if you ask about Janice, for example. There was something hidden in these different dialogues that the person would give that would somehow relate to a grid. So I hadn't said anything yet in case people would hyper-focus on this too much. Maybe they could figure something out and then I could let them know, hey, there's something hidden in the grids, if you ask a grid number or whatever. But there didn't end up being anything, so instead, what people had done is there was a group of people, specifically Lexia Knight, MaddyUyen, I don't know how to pronounce that, I'm sorry, ArtofDumpling, aka Pestilence, Kiva, Icycl, and Nubnidub. These 6 people worked on a spreadsheet of gathering every directories, like, from A1 to G29, all of their little, the little usernames and passwords, and the answers inside for the different gibberish inside each of these files. It was really because of them that we figured this out. Massive shout out to them. Lexia, Maddy, ArtofDumpling, Kiva, Icycl, Nubnidub. And there's someone else that translated them all into binary, FallenAster. It never amounted to anything, but I figured they still deserve their own credit. They translated everything into binary. But, yeah. This is where people were stumped for the longest time, and when people started going to bed. I was the first one to realize each of these little, directory names were 6 digits followed by 2 X's. Like, I can give a random one right now, like F5. They were all 6 digits followed by 2 X's. Specifically with a hashtag at the front. This immediately made my mind go to hex code. And so I mapped out these grids following out the hex code, which I can get a screenshot up real quick. I mapped out the shape of the grid following the hex codes, being 1 pixel for every hex code here, and it gave a password. I do not have it pulled up, but it eventually spelled out the password H0CJ7K4X. Now, we had that password for about like 10 hours, but we didn't know what to do with it. We didn't have a directory name to link it to, and you can't do anything with the firewall because the firewall is already deactive. Like, it doesn't take that password. So, me and a group of others were stuck on this for about 10 hours. And it was only until the morning of that day when when people like started waking up and started coming back that we had the idea of doing something with the passwords. Now, right before everyone went to sleep, we did have the idea of writing out all the passwords in one. Like the A row being all one row, the B row, stuff like that, like we had done for previous answers. And we did get what looked to be ASCII art, but we could never make sense of it. It looked like two boxes, like just two boxes on each side with a separator in the middle. We could never make sense of it. So we figured there was just something we were missing in the ASCII art, and we were waiting for a dev to give a hint. But it was like during the little time we were waiting to get a hint, or maybe it was after, I can't remember, someone had the idea to reformat it where instead of the rows being on the side and the letters being at the top, and the numbers being on the side, they changed it so the letters were on the side and the numbers were at the top, and that's what then formed the ASCII art to give us the directory name. Which I thought we had done so like way earlier on in the night, but I guess we hadn't. But anyways, this would then leave us with the directory name being S72JSFK1. So that puzzle in itself took us third of the time, I think, that we were solving. It was very complicated, very deeply layered. Honestly, props to the devs. That was a really cool puzzle. But that did take way too long for, I think it was like 50 people working at it in total. But I typed it wrong. Okay. Okay, wait, no, I just removed me, like, mistyping everything a bunch. The password wasn't a 0, again, it was an O. I don't know what made me think everything is a 0, but yeah. It's actually HOCJ7K4X. But yeah, once you open this is where you get the final part of the puzzle. The final answer that will give us the 11-digit code for the door to our side. Now, this is the part where I went to sleep. I had been up for like 30 some hours doing this. I was not here for solving a majority of these. The only thing we knew immediately was how many subjects were there. There were 12 kidnapped children, so there would be 12 test subjects for the whatever it is that the Tripress was doing. And we knew immediately to look at the cloud from the nursery in chapter 3. We knew of the cracked tiles, well, first of all in this chapter, but then there's also cracked tiles in chapter 4 and chapter 2, one being a ceiling tile in chapter 2 that was cracked into 6 pieces, and the cracked tiles in the floor of chapter 4. Running on fumes left and right. Could have meant a majority could have meant a lot of things. The majority assumed it was the phrase running on fumes, meaning running when you're extremely tired, which would then relate to the amount of people working in the office building in chapter 4, being 30, but a lot of these were wrong. The intended solution, we also didn't know the address for this, so we didn't have the location for the longest time, but the intended way we were supposed to work this out is where are you, please address relates to the address to the Tripress, which, of course, we assumed that from the start. We just never had an address to go off of for the longest time, until someone remembered the sticky note map in chapter 2, which gave us the address 455 Olive Street. So the first 3 being 455. I will not write that immediately in the code because it's only 8 digits and I want to be able to write this out for the video. After that, we knew there were 12 subjects from the start. And now, count the cards down to the decimal. This one was really confusing because we didn't know exactly what cards to count. We didn't consider the down to the decimal part. This basically tells us to count the cards down from the little card pyramid in chapter 4. Because next to the playing card table, there's just this card pyramid, and there's 4 different layers to it. And these 4 layers, only the top 2 have President or Phoenix cards or whatever it is. I don't remember their exact names. So those top 2 layers would then be ignored because the President Phoenix cards don't have values. But the cards in the middle do. So looking at the cards are in the bottom 2 layers too. So looking at the different pairs to make each little triangle inside the pyramid, you would get the numbers 84, 87, and 79 for the 3rd row. And converting that from ASCII into text, you would spell out 2, TWO. And the bottom row would have the pairs 78, 73, 78, and 66, which would spell out 9 from ASCII to text. So the answer for the cards puzzle would end up being 29. Now, checking the middle of cloud was simple. You just go to chapter 3, go to the block stack that spelled out cloud, and then in the middle of cloud, obviously, the middle block makes the word 0, so it's just 0. You could obviously just look at, the center of the word cloud. I don't know why they made it the block stack itself, because again, you can obviously just deduce it from the word cloud. I feel like they should have made it a different number, but I don't know how they intended it, so I cannot argue against that. They are the devs that worked on this. It just feels a little too redundant, but whatever. That is my opinion alone. After this, elements of cracking tiles. This originally said something like... let me see if I can find it. Hang on. Yeah, this originally said cracks in the tiles. So we assumed that this would be a group of tiles, but we didn't know which group of tiles it would be. We knew, again, there were a bunch of cracked tiles across a few chapters, but we just assumed it would be the one in chapter 6, just because that's the most, prevalent one. It's the one right next to us. There's a group of tiles there, plus half a tile cracked that would have 15 tile shards. But this elements of part that they added to the cracking tiles pointed us to chapter 4, which means we would have to look at the floor that had the cracked tiles. The problem is none of us assumed that the cracked tiles would relate to elements, because the only elements we have are those reagents on the shelves, but the reagents obviously shuffle each playthrough. But I'm assuming that the two that... I don't know how they did it, to be honest. I cannot speak for the devs. All I know is that the cracked tiles in chapter 4, we eventually pieced together that does relate to the reagents. We didn't assume it previously because of it shuffling. But the cracks in the tiles relate to positions on the reagent shelf that would relate to oxygen and neon. Which, when you take the element symbol, it would spell out 1, O for oxygen and E for neon. When you put them together, it would give you the answer 1. Now, for running on fumes left and right, this is also in chapter 4, where when you look at the fume hood, there were buttons on the left and right of the fume hood shaped in Morse code, which when you translate, it would give us the digits 6 and 8 when you go from left to right, running on fumes left and right. So, once all of that was put together, you are eventually given the final code, being 455-122-90168, which I will write out in chat, actually. I don't know why I wasn't doing that. 455-122-90168. That's what you would get from the information from all the different chapters, which it just tagged, okay. So you can then come to the keypad here and input it. By the way, your character covers the screen sometimes. You have to jump to the side when you open it. It's weird. Like there. So when you come here, 455-122-90168, opens the door. I have not done this yet myself.